I think Saw X might be the best Saw sequel yet. I know, that's a hell of an endorsement right there. What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Josh. Today we're going to be talking about Saw X, which releases in theaters this weekend. This is, of course, the 10th entry in the Saw franchise. Now, I've never really been a fan of this franchise as a whole. I really like the first one. I think it's very unfairly regarded as this sort of pioneer of the torture porn of horror movies. The first one is actually a lot more psychological. There are elements to 2 and 3 that I like, but for the most part, all of the sequels fall into the category of mediocre, ranging all the way to absolute garbage, and very much living up to that torture porn billing that it's often assigned. And this movie is set between the first and second Saw, so we have John Kramer back, we have Amanda back, the original Jigsaw killer and his accomplice, and this is easily the most screen time he's had since at least Saw 3. Because, spoilers for Saw 3, he dies at the end of that one. In fact, I should say there will probably be spoilers in this for many other Saw films, but not this one, of course, because I want to keep it spoiler-free for those who haven't seen it yet. Tobin Bell slides back into this role nicely. It's great to see him at the front and center of this film. The actors have aged 20 years, and you can definitely tell, but I think it was a smart creative decision, if you're going to make another Saw film, to put the characters that the franchise is known for at the forefront of it. And most of the time when we watch these movies, we see the game play out from the perspective of the victims. Here we actually get to see some behind the scenes of how these two actually set up the traps, and more importantly, what's going on in their heads, both psychologically and how are they planning for alternative possibilities of how things may pan out. And this does start out actually totally different from every other Saw film to the best of my knowledge. John Kramer essentially learning that he has mere months to live before his brain tumor does him in. But he discovers this obscure, highly experimental treatment option over in Mexico. He flies there, undergoes surgery, only to discover that the whole thing was a con. I did take issue with the fact that this movie really tries to humanize and make you sympathize with John Kramer. Like, the entire first hour or so is this really dark sob story of, oh, he has cancer and he has only months left to live. No one will even attempt to treat him because he's too far gone. And yes, of course, it's sad that he has cancer. I wouldn't wish cancer on my worst enemy. But he's still a hypocrite and he's still a killer. Sorry, I know he tries to say that he doesn't actually murder people, he just finds ways for them to kill themselves, but you're still putting someone in a situation where if they don't maim themselves horrifically, they're gonna die. I don't think that would hold up in a court of law. Point is, through most of this movie, I was still rooting for the victims to survive these games. I mean, maybe they could lose an arm or an eye or a couple fingers to maybe learn not to prey on the weak and vulnerable, but they don't deserve to die for this. I gotta say, there's something that happens sort of earlier on in this movie that I've been wanting Saw sequels to do for a long time, and they just usually don't. I'm not gonna say what it is because I think it's a pretty big spoiler, but it just really added to the tension in the rest of the movie by setting things up in an interesting way. But I think the thing I like the most about this movie is the dynamic between John and Amanda. You get a little more insight into their relationship while the game is playing out. Again, I'm not rooting for either of these characters necessarily because they're doing horrible things, but you do get some insight into what they're thinking and the morality that they're trying to work through to justify these things that they're doing. And to me, Amanda will probably always be the most fascinating character in this franchise because not only did she survive one of Jigsaw's traps and reform her life for the better, she's now probably only furthering his delusions that he's actually reforming other people's lives by putting them in these horrible traps. When in reality, I think she's just crazy, and somehow surviving that adrenaline rush of the reverse bear trap awoken something inside of her that sort of made her turn a little bit crazy too. I want to talk about the traps for a minute. Some of them were a little bit disappointing to me, but others, yep, they definitely were the type of thing to have you biting your nails, sitting on the edge of your seat. One in particular had me wincing multiple times. It was just that brutal, and it went on for a long time. Is it gratuitous at times? Absolutely, but I'm fine with a little bit of gore here and there if we're also going to get a story that's at least somewhat interesting and does something original, at least compared to the previous 9 films. Another thing that I appreciate about the traps is that they tone down the frantic, quick cut, sped up editing that I absolutely loathe in many of the other sequels. This movie does have a lot of problems though. I mean, I hate to break it to you if you're a huge Saw fan, but I'm pretty sure, objectively speaking, you could point out a lot of issues in most of the storylines of these films. If you watch this series for the twists and turns, you might be a bit disappointed here because most of them I think were well in advance telegraphed. I wasn't really shocked by anything that happened, especially towards the third act. There are some moments that I feel are supposed to have the impact that the twist endings of previous Saw films have had, and I just wasn't really feeling it. Again, somehow John Kramer always has the ability to plan for every possible course of events. Not very realistic. And needless to say, the acting and dialogue aren't very good at times, especially with some of the supporting characters, but you kind of come to expect that from a Saw sequel. Plus, I don't even think the acting and dialogue were that great in the original. They just had a really solid story with a lot of great twists and turns that elevated all of the smaller production values of that original. Does this come anywhere near that original? Absolutely not. In fact, this isn't a story that I feel needed to be told. It doesn't close any glaring gaps in the continuity of this series. But for the most part, I would say it's an entertaining enough entry into the franchise. It's mostly just a gory exploitation flick, just like a lot of the others, but with a little sprinkle of creative energy and a bit of substance. So I'm gonna give Saw X 3 stars out of 5. If you're a fan of this entire series, I don't think you really need my endorsement to go and see this. You're probably gonna enjoy it. In fact, you might enjoy it a lot more than most of us because I think this is one of the better entries in the franchise. Who knows, I might rewatch this and find that it has just as many problems as 2 and 3 and many of the others. But as of right now, I'm willing to say it's passable. I'll give it a very mild thumbs up. So those are my thoughts on Saw X. I was actually really having a tough time deciding whether to see this or The Creator first. I'll be seeing and reviewing The Creator tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. If you have seen this film, do let me know down in the comments what you thought of it. Is it one of the better sequels, or are you just a fan of this entire franchise as a whole? Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later.